The silent observers, the watchers in the dark. Captain Thrak pressed his scaled hand against the observation deck's viewing portal, watching the small blue world spin lazily in the void. Earth. Such a plain name for a planet, he thought. The humans called their entire world after common soil. It was perfectly fitting for such an unremarkable species. The bridge of the Zephyrian cruiser Stellar Dominance hummed with the quiet efficiency of a race that had been conquering star systems for over 4,000 years. The Zephyrians had perfected the art of galactic expansion long before most species had even discovered fire. These humans were no different from the dozens of primitive civilizations they had absorbed into their empire over the millennia. "Captain," Lieutenant Vass called from his monitoring station, his voice carrying the bored tone of someone performing routine surveillance. "The human orbital activity has increased again. They're moving more construction materials to their lunar installation." Thrak didn't bother turning around. "How much more?" "Approximately 300% increase over last month, sir. But it's still just basic construction materials, metal alloys, power cells, nothing that suggests advanced technology." The captain finally turned, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he considered this information. The humans had been unusually busy lately, but busy didn't necessarily mean dangerous. They had only achieved basic interstellar flight 6 months ago, and their fastest ships still relied on primitive fusion drives that took weeks to travel between their own planets. "Maintain observation protocols," Thrak ordered, "and prepare the monthly report for High Command. I'm sure they'll be fascinated to learn that the humans have discovered how to weld metal in space." The bridge crew made the Zephyrian equivalent of laughter, a sound like wind chimes made of metal. It was a comfortable sound, the sound of a species that had never encountered a civilization they couldn't eventually conquer. Unusual energy signatures. 3 weeks later, that comfortable confidence began to crack. "Captain," Vass called, his voice no longer bored but sharp with concern. "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the human lunar facility. Power output is climbing beyond anything their technology should be capable of producing." Thrak moved to the sensor station, his expression shifting from casual interest to focused attention. The readings on the display made him pause. "These numbers can't be correct. Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array." "Already completed, sir. All systems are functioning normally. The humans appear to have tapped into their planet's magnetic field somehow, but the power conversion rates suggest technology we don't recognize." For the first time in months, Thrak felt something that might have been concern. The Zephyrians had been monitoring human technological development closely. Their scientists were clever enough, but their industrial capacity was limited, and their understanding of advanced physics was basic at best. They shouldn't have been able to generate the kind of power readings his sensors were detecting. "Show me the construction site," he commanded. The main display shifted to show a detailed view of the lunar installation. What had begun as a simple construction project had grown into something massive. The facility now stretched across nearly 200 kilometers of the moon's surface, with electromagnetic coils, power generators, and what appeared to be a linear accelerator of unprecedented size. "By the void," Thrak whispered. "What are they building?" Before Vass could answer, the communications console erupted with incoming signals from across the galaxy. The hegemony, the trade consortium, the crystal lords, even the isolationist Phantom Fleet was sending scouts toward the Sol system. "Captain," Communications Officer Zelt reported, her voice tight with tension. "We're receiving priority alerts from multiple sources. Every major power in the galaxy is detecting the same energy signatures we are. Whatever the humans are building, it's got everyone's attention." Thrak felt the cold touch of realization creeping up his spine. In 4,000 years of galactic politics, only a few things could simultaneously attract the attention of every major empire: the discovery of a new faster-than-light drive, the development of planet-killing weapons, or the emergence of a new galactic power. The humans were supposed to be decades away from any of those possibilities. The gathering storm. Over the next several days, the Sol system began to resemble a very tense neighborhood gathering. Ships from 7 different galactic empires took up positions at the edge of human space, each fleet maintaining careful distances from the others while keeping their weapons trained on the mysterious lunar installation. The humans, for their part, remained frustratingly quiet. Their few military vessels took defensive positions throughout their system, but they made no aggressive moves. They sent no communications to the alien fleets. They simply continued working on their construction project with the focused intensity of a species that knew exactly what they were doing. "Captain," Vask reported during the third day of the standoff, "the energy readings from the lunar facility are approaching critical levels. Whatever they're building, they're preparing to activate it." Thrax studied the tactical display showing the positions of all the fleets in the system. The hegemony had brought a full battle group, including their flagship Eternal Conquest. The Trade Consortium had deployed their most advanced surveillance vessels. Even the mysterious Crystal Lords had sent representatives, their ships glowing with the same ethereal light that made them so feared across the galaxy. All of them were here because of the humans. The same species that had been classified as a minimal threat just months ago had somehow managed to build something that made the galaxy's most powerful empires nervous. "Sir," Zelt called from communications, "we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Corton of the Hegemony Fleet. He's requesting a joint conference with all fleet commanders." The main display shifted to show Admiral Corton's imposing figure. The hegemony leader looked like evolution had designed him specifically for warfare, with razor-sharp features and eyes that had seen the conquest of 100 worlds. "Commanders," Corton began without preamble, "our science divisions have completed their analysis of the human construction project. The results are disturbing." Captain Thrak felt his confidence continue to erode. If something could disturb the hegemony's science division, it was worth taking seriously. "The humans have constructed what appears to be a magnetic acceleration system of enormous scale," Corton continued. "The power requirements alone should be impossible with their current technology level, yet somehow they're drawing energy directly from their planet's magnetic field, using methods our scientists don't fully understand." Commander Lyse of the Crystal Lords spoke next, her voice like singing crystal. "Our analysis suggests the weapon could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic energy release would be comparable to antimatter weaponry." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that happens when everyone realizes they might have made a terrible mistake. The calm before the storm. As the alien fleets maintained their tense vigil, the human construction project reached completion. The energy readings stabilized at levels that made every sensor array in the system register constant warnings. The linear accelerator, now clearly visible as a railgun of unprecedented size, pointed directly into space like an enormous finger of death. Still, the humans remained silent. "Captain," Vask reported, "I'm detecting movement throughout the human fleet. They're repositioning their vessels, but not in retreat patterns. They appear to be taking up defensive positions throughout their system." Thrax studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human fleet consisted of perhaps 200 vessels, most of which wouldn't qualify as patrol boats in any civilized navy. Against the combined fleets of 7 galactic empires, they were hopelessly outnumbered. Yet they weren't running. Either they were completely insane, or they knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. "Sir," Zelt announced, "incoming transmission from the human fleet. Admiral Sarah Chen is requesting an open channel to all vessels in the system." Thrak exchanged glances with his senior officers. In his long career, he had never encountered a situation quite like this. A primitive species, outnumbered thousands to one, requesting to address the fleets that had come to evaluate their surrender. "Open the channel," he ordered. The display shifted to show a human female in a military uniform that looked practical rather than ceremonial. Admiral Chen appeared calm, professional, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who held all the cards in a very dangerous game. "Greetings," she said, her voice carrying clearly across all the alien communication channels. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command. You are currently in sovereign human space without invitation or authorization." The audacity of the statement sent ripples of disbelief through the assembled fleets. A species that had barely learned to leave their own planet was claiming sovereignty against the combined might of galactic civilization. "You have 1 hour to begin withdrawal beyond the heliopause," Admiral Chen continued, her tone remaining conversational. "This is your only warning." The communication channel erupted with responses from various alien commanders, ranging from laughter to outrage to complete disbelief. Admiral Corton's voice cut through the noise with military authority. "Admiral Chen, you are vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and your species will be granted client status within the hegemony." Admiral Chen's response came back immediately, and for the first time Thrak detected something that might have been amusement in her voice. "Admiral Corton, Thank you for volunteering your flagship as our demonstration target. Please maintain your current position. We'll begin the test firing in 57 minutes. The silence that followed was absolute. Every being on every ship in the system suddenly understood that they were no longer observers of a primitive species making empty threats. They were witnesses to something unprecedented in galactic history. The underdogs were about to bare their teeth. The demonstration that shook the galaxy. The hour of truth. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the human flagship Resilience, watching the tactical display that showed nearly 3,000 alien warships positioned throughout the Sol system. Each vessel represented centuries of military engineering from civilizations that had conquered entire star systems before humanity had even discovered agriculture. Admiral, Commander Rodriguez reported from the weapons station. Luna Base reports full charge on the primary railgun. All targeting systems are locked onto the hegemony flagship Eternal Conquest. Chen nodded calmly. She had spent the last 18 months preparing for this moment, working with refugee scientists from a dozen conquered species to build something that would fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy. Today, the universe would learn that humanity had allies the great empires had never suspected. Time remaining? She asked. 37 minutes until deadline, Rodriguez replied. The alien fleets are maintaining position, but we're detecting increased communication traffic between their command ships. On the main screen, Chen could see the impressive bulk of Admiral Corton's flagship. The Eternal Conquest was over 2 kilometers long, armed with enough firepower to sterilize a planet, and protected by shields that could withstand direct hits from antimatter warheads. It was a monument to hegemony engineering and military supremacy. In 37 minutes, it would be a cloud of superheated plasma. Desperate negotiations. The communication channels crackled to life as alien commanders attempted to process the impossible situation they found themselves in. For the first time in galactic history, a species they had come to conquer was setting the terms of engagement. "This is Chancellor Vorth of the Galactic Trade Consortium," a voice announced over the general communication frequency. "Perhaps we can reach a diplomatic solution to this misunderstanding. The consortium is always willing to negotiate with emerging civilizations." Admiral Chen's response carried the patient tone of someone explaining something obvious to a slow student. "Chancellor, there's no misunderstanding. Your fleets arrived in our system without permission, with obvious hostile intent, and with the assumption that humanity would simply surrender to superior numbers. We're correcting that assumption." "Admiral Chen," Admiral Corton's voice cut through the channel, "you cannot seriously believe that one weapon, regardless of its power, can stand against the combined might of 7 galactic empires." "One weapon?" Chen laughed, and the sound made Captain Thrack's scales itch with nervous energy aboard his observation ship. "Admiral, you've been watching us for months, but apparently you haven't been paying very close attention." The tactical displays throughout the alien fleets suddenly lit up with new contacts. Energy signatures identical to the lunar railgun were powering up across the Sol system. One on Mars, one in the asteroid belt, one near Jupiter, and 2 more on mobile platforms that had been disguised as ordinary cargo haulers. 6 installations, Chen announced cheerfully, each one capable of the same performance you're about to witness. Think of it as a comprehensive home security system. The silence that followed was the sound of several thousand alien military officers simultaneously realizing their tactical situation had just become hopeless. The mathematics of destruction. "Admiral," Commander Les of the Crystal Lords transmitted, her crystalline voice tight with something that might have been fear. "Our calculations suggest that weapons of this magnitude could destabilize the entire galactic balance of power." "Commander Liss," Chen replied, "your calculations are correct. That's exactly what we intend to do." Captain Thrack found himself leaning forward at his command station, trying to understand how the situation had deteriorated so completely. The humans had somehow managed to build weapons that exceeded the technology of civilizations thousands of years more advanced, and they were treating the most powerful military forces in the galaxy like unwelcome dinner guests. 15 minutes to demonstration, Commander Rodriguez announced. "Admiral Chen," a new voice joined the communication channel. "Captain Zenth of the Phantom Fleet, a species so advanced they rarely bothered with galactic politics. Our analysis suggests your weapons derive their power through quantum manipulation of planetary magnetic fields. Such technology should be beyond your species' current understanding of physics." Chen's smile was audible in her response. "Captain Zenth, you're absolutely right. It is beyond our current understanding. Fortunately, we've had excellent teachers." Before any of the alien commanders could ask what that meant, Chen continued. "You see, for the past several decades, refugees from your various conquests have been finding their way to Earth. Survivors from the Veltari civilization, the Nokari resistance, remnants of the hegemony's war against the Silicon Collective." Captain Thrak felt the deck seem to shift beneath his feet. The conquered species weren't extinct. They had been hiding, waiting, planning. Each group brought something valuable, Chen explained. The Veltari brought advanced physics theories. The Nokari contributed weapons technology. The Silicon Collective survivors provided computing systems that make our targeting impossible to jam or deceive. The implications hit every alien commander simultaneously. The humans hadn't developed their impossible weapons alone. They had been guided by the survivors of galactic conquest, beings with intimate knowledge of their conquerors' weaknesses and an overwhelming motivation for revenge. The point of no return. 10 minutes to demonstration, Rodriguez announced. The communication channels erupted with desperate attempts at negotiation from alien commanders who were beginning to understand the true scope of their predicament. "Admiral Chen," Chancellor Vorth transmitted, "surely we can reach an accommodation. The Trade Consortium has always valued mutually beneficial relationships with new species. The hegemony is prepared to offer humanity full membership status," Admiral Corton added quickly. "The Crystal Lords would welcome Earth into our territorial agreements," Commander Les contributed. Chen listened to the increasingly frantic offers with the patient expression of someone who had anticipated every possible response. "Gentlemen, ladies, and assorted beings, I appreciate your sudden interest in diplomatic solutions. However, you seem to have misunderstood the nature of this demonstration." 5 minutes to firing, Rodriguez reported. "This isn't a negotiation," Chen continued. "This is a lesson. For thousands of years, your various empires have operated under the assumption that superior technology and numbers guarantee victory. You've conquered hundreds of species based on that assumption. Today, you're going to learn why that assumption is flawed." Captain Thrak made a decision that would probably end his military career, but might save his crew. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for immediate emergency jump to minimum safe distance. Execute on my mark." "Captain," his tactical officer protested, "withdrawing without orders from high command would be considered cowardice." "Lieutenant," Thrak replied grimly, "high command isn't about to be vaporized by a weapon that shouldn't exist. Mark." The Stellar Dominance engaged its emergency faster-than-light drive and jumped to a position several light minutes away from the demonstration zone. Across the system, other captains were making similar decisions, their ships disappearing from the immediate vicinity of the Eternal Conquest in flashes of distorted space-time. The shot that changed everything. 2 minutes to firing, Rodriguez announced. Admiral Corton's voice came across the communication channel one final time, carrying the authority of a military leader who had never experienced defeat. "Admiral Chen, the hegemony does not surrender to threats. If you fire on our flagship, you will face the consequences of declaring war against the most powerful empire in the galaxy." "Admiral Corton," Chen replied, "the most powerful empire in the galaxy is about to change management." 30 seconds to firing. The lunar railgun's energy output climbed to levels that made every sensor in the system register critical warnings. Space-time itself began to bend around the enormous electromagnetic coils as they prepared to accelerate a projectile to nearly the speed of light. 10 seconds. 5. Firing. The universe held its breath for exactly 0.7 seconds. Then space seemed to tear itself apart as something invisible crossed the solar system faster than most sensors could track. The projectile left a wake of distorted gravity and electromagnetic chaos that made reality flicker like a broken hologram. The Eternal Conquest didn't explode. It didn't break apart. It simply ceased to exist. One moment, Admiral Corton's flagship was there, a 2-kilometer monument to hegemony military supremacy. The next moment, there was nothing but a rapidly expanding sphere of superheated plasma where 2,000 crew members and the most advanced warship in the hegemony fleet had been. The silence that followed was the sound of an entire galaxy's understanding of warfare being rewritten in real time. The new reality. "Direct hit confirmed," Commander Rodriguez reported with professional calm. "Target completely destroyed. No debris larger than individual atoms detected." Admiral Chen's voice carried across every communication channel in the system with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. Demonstration complete. As promised, that was fired at reduced power to minimize collateral damage to nearby vessels. Full power shots are considerably more impressive. The communication channels remain silent except for the background static of emergency broadcasts as alien fleets throughout the system tried to process what they had just witnessed. Now then, Chen continued, you have 11.5 hours to clear our system. Any vessel remaining after that deadline will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Captain Thrax stared at his tactical display from his safe distance, watching as the most powerful military forces in known space began the fastest retreat in galactic history. Ships that had arrived with conquest in mind were now fleeing like startled prey animals. Captain, his communications officer reported with a shaking voice, we're receiving priority transmissions from Zephyrian High Command. They're demanding immediate tactical assessment and evacuation recommendations. Thrak almost laughed. Evacuation recommendations. Yesterday, the Zephyrian Empire had been planning to add another species to their collection of client states. Today, they were asking how to run away fast enough to survive. Tell High Command that the tactical situation has changed, he replied. The humans are no longer a conquest target. They're now a galactic superpower, and we're in their territory without permission. As alien fleets throughout the Sol system engaged their fastest drives and fled toward the edge of human space, Admiral Chen's final transmission followed them into the void. Oh, and commanders, you might want to check on your home systems. I believe some of your old friends have been busy while you were visiting us. The implications of that statement would become clear within hours, as rebellion erupted across the galaxy and ancient empires discovered that the age of easy conquest was over. The age of consequences had begun. When underdogs became apex predators, the galaxy burns. Within 6 hours of the Eternal Conquest's destruction, the galactic communication networks erupted with reports of coordinated uprisings across 73 star systems. Ancient empires that had ruled for millennia suddenly found themselves fighting for survival as their conquered subjects revealed weapons identical to Earth's railgun installations. Captain Thrak received the first reports while his ship limped toward the edge of human space, its engines straining to put distance between them and the species that had just redefined galactic warfare. Captain, Communications Officer Zelt reported, her voice tight with disbelief, priority transmission from Zephyrian Prime. The capital system is under attack by Veltari resistance forces. They're reporting weapon signatures matching the human railguns. Thrax slumped in his command chair, finally understanding the full scope of what the humans had orchestrated. This hadn't been a defensive action, it had been the opening move in a galactic revolution. How many systems? He asked quietly. 47 confirmed rebellion so far, sir. The hegemony has lost contact with their entire outer rim territories. The trade consortium's shipping lanes are being systematically destroyed by ships they thought they'd eliminated decades ago. Through the bridge viewports, Thrak could see other alien vessels fleeing the Sol system in various states of panic and damage. The proud fleets that had arrived to demand humanity's surrender were now racing home to defend capitals that might already be ash and rubble, the architect of revolution. Back on the bridge of the Resilience, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with the satisfaction of someone whose carefully laid plans were unfolding exactly as intended. The retreating alien fleets were moving with the desperate urgency of predators who had suddenly discovered they were prey. Admiral, Commander Rodriguez reported, we're receiving confirmation signals from resistance cells throughout the galaxy. Operation Liberation is proceeding ahead of schedule. Chen nodded. 18 months of secret coordination, smuggled weapons technology, and careful timing had led to this moment. The refugee scientists who had found sanctuary on Earth hadn't just provided technical knowledge. They had maintained contact with resistance movements throughout their former territories, waiting for the moment when humanity could provide the tools necessary for effective rebellion. Communications from the Phantom Fleet, Admiral, Lieutenant Hayes announced from the comm station. Captain Zenth is requesting immediate diplomatic discussions. Chen smiled. The Phantom Fleet was the galaxy's most advanced military force, so technologically superior that they rarely bothered with political conflicts. If they were requesting negotiations, it meant they understood the new reality faster than their competitors. Put him through, Chen ordered. Captain Zenth's image appeared on the main screen. His species looked like living shadows with stars for eyes, and his voice carried the weight of cosmic experience. Admiral Chen, the Phantom Fleet acknowledges Earth's emergence as a galactic power. We propose immediate establishment of mutual non-aggression treaties. Captain Zenth, Chen replied. The Phantom Fleet has never participated in the conquest of peaceful species. Your territories will be respected, and your ships will have safe passage through human space. The ease of the negotiation made a stark contrast to the chaos erupting throughout the rest of the galaxy. The Phantom Fleet had survived as the galaxy's apex military force by understanding when to fight and when to adapt. They were adapting. The fall of ancient empires. The hegemony capital world of Caraxes had been the center of galactic power for over 2,000 years. Its orbital defense platforms could destroy entire fleets. Its planetary shields could withstand stellar-level bombardments, and its military academies had trained the commanders who conquered half the known galaxy. None of that mattered when projectiles traveling at 97% of light speed began striking the defense platforms. Admiral Corton's replacement, General Vex Prime, watched in horror from his command bunker as railgun strikes systematically dismantled the most fortified system in hegemony space. Each shot arrived without warning, traveling too fast for conventional sensors to track, hitting with enough kinetic energy to vaporize targets the size of small moons. "Status report," Vex Prime demanded, though he already knew the answer would be catastrophic. "Sir," his tactical officer replied with a shaking voice, "orbital platforms 7 through 15 are completely destroyed. The Veltari resistance fleet is maintaining position at the edge of the system, firing at will. Our return fire can't reach them before they jump to new positions." It was a nightmare scenario that hegemony strategists had never considered. An enemy force that could strike with overwhelming power from ranges that made retaliation impossible, using technology that the hegemony's own science division couldn't understand, much less counter. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "incoming transmission from the resistance fleet. They're demanding unconditional surrender and the immediate release of all political prisoners." Vex Prime stared at the tactical display showing the systematic destruction of everything the hegemony had built. In 6 hours, a resistance movement they had thought eliminated had reduced the galaxy's most powerful military to helplessness. "Open a channel," he said quietly. The price of centuries. Similar scenes played out across dozens of star systems as the galaxy's great empires discovered that their former victims had not forgotten, had not forgiven, and now possessed weapons that made conventional military force obsolete. The Trade Consortium's massive commercial hub at Nexus Station found itself under attack by ships crewed by species they had enslaved for their industrial knowledge. The Crystal Lord's beautiful geometric worlds came under bombardment from beings whose home planets they had strip-mined for rare minerals. Each rebellion was coordinated, precise, and utterly merciless. The refugees who had found sanctuary on Earth had spent decades planning not just for freedom, but for justice. Captain Thrak received regular updates as his ship fled toward Zephyrian space, each report more devastating than the last. The galaxy he had known was collapsing, replaced by something unprecedented in cosmic history. The systematic liberation of conquered peoples using technology that made their former oppressors' military might irrelevant. "Captain," Lieutenant Vask reported, "long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy. It's not just rebellions anymore, sir. The freed systems are forming defensive alliances." Thrak nodded grimly. The humans hadn't just sparked a revolution. They had provided the framework for a new galactic order, one where the formerly powerless now held the ultimate military advantage. The new galactic order. 3 days after the demonstration in the Sol system, Admiral Chen received a priority communication from Chancellor Vorth of the Trade Consortium. The alien leader who had once offered condescending negotiations now spoke with the careful respect of someone addressing a superior power. "Admiral Chen," Vorth began, "the Trade Consortium formally recognizes Earth's sovereignty and requests permission to establish peaceful commercial relationships." Similar messages arrived throughout the day. The hegemony's provisional government sought non-aggression treaties. The Crystal Lords offered technological exchanges. Even smaller empires that hadn't participated in the original confrontation sent diplomatic overtures, hoping to avoid the fate of their more aggressive neighbors. Chen reviewed each message with her senior staff, considering the shape of the galaxy they were creating. "Admiral," Commander Rodriguez observed, "we've essentially become the galaxy's dominant military power overnight. How do we handle that responsibility?" It was the question Chen had been expecting. Humanity had gained the power to reshape galactic civilization, but with that power came the obligation to use it wisely. "We ensure this never happens again," she replied. "No more conquests based on technological superiority. No more enslavement of developing species. The galaxy becomes a place where civilizations advance through cooperation instead of domination. And if the old empires refuse to accept the new order? Lieutenant Hayes asked. Chen's smile carried no warmth. Then they'll discover that humanity learned more from our refugee friends than just weapons technology. We also learned about justice. The universe transformed. 6 months later, the galactic balance of power had been completely rewritten. The hegemony existed as a shadow of its former self, reduced to governing only systems that chose to remain loyal. The trade consortium had transformed from a predatory commercial empire into an actual trade organization that served its member worlds instead of exploiting them. Throughout the galaxy, species that had lived under alien domination for centuries were rebuilding their civilizations with the protection of Earth's railgun network. The weapons that had destroyed ancient empires now served as guardians of galactic peace, ensuring that no single power could again subjugate entire star systems. Captain Thrak, now serving as a diplomatic liaison between the reformed Zephyrian Republic and Earth, stood once again on an observation deck watching the blue planet rotate in space. But everything had changed. Where once he had seen a primitive world ripe for conquest, he now saw the center of a new galactic order. The humans had done more than defend themselves. They had liberated an entire galaxy from the cycle of conquest and oppression that had defined interstellar relations for millennia. Captain, his aide announced, Admiral Chen has approved the Zephyrian request for technical assistance in rebuilding our outer colonies. Thrak nodded. The Zephyrian Empire had been forced to grant independence to dozens of species it had conquered, but with Earth's guidance they were learning to coexist as equals rather than rulers and subjects. Send our gratitude to the Admiral, he replied, and remind her that the Zephyrian people will not forget humanity's mercy. As Thrak watched Earth continue its ancient rotation, he reflected on how completely the universe had changed. The humans had faced impossible odds and emerged not just victorious, but as the architects of a better galaxy. They had proven that sometimes the greatest strength came not from the power to destroy enemies, but from the wisdom to transform them into allies. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And at the center of it all, a small blue planet called Earth continued to spin, carrying the species that had taught the galaxy a simple but revolutionary truth: that even the mightiest empires could fall when their victims found the courage to stand together and fight back. The humans had fired their first railgun, and the sound had echoed across every star in the galaxy, not as a threat, but as a promise that the strong would no longer prey upon the weak without consequence. The universe would never be the same. The end.